Welcome to episode 41 of Norse Myths, Legends, and Folktales. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we learn that a great feast is held in Aegir's hall under the sea after Baldur's death, in which all the gods attend, including Loki, who finds a way to insult each and every one of them in Loki's Flyting. On one occasion, some while after Baldur's death, when they could think about him quietly and talk about him calmly for all their foreboding, many of the gods went over to the island of Hlesey for a feast. Aegir received them in his gleaming hall under the waves, and since Thor and Tyr had secured Hymir's mighty cauldron for him, he had no choice but to keep his promise and brew a welter of ale and entertain his guests. Thor himself was away on another foray into Jotunheim, but Odin and Frigg led the way. Thor's wife Sif and Bragi and his wife Ithun accompanied them. So did Tyr, who had left one hand in the mouth of the wolf Fenrir, and to him the gods renewed their thanks for the part he had played in wresting the cauldron 5 miles deep from his father Hymir. Njord and his wife Skadi made the journey too. So did Freyr and Freya and Freyr's 2 servants, Bigvi and Bela. Odin's son Vida went with them, and Loki was there. This was not all. Many other gods and a throng of elves gathered in the hall that was lit with great nuggets of shining gold. The guests sat down at the benches, and Aegir's 2 serving men, Fimagfong and Swift Handler, and Eldur, the man of fire, moved amongst them. The cups filled themselves with ale, and the hall was filled with peaceful hum of good talk. When Loki heard one god after another praise the diligence of Aegir's 2 servants, he began to bridle. The pleasure and goodwill in that place became too much for him. He seethed like boiling water. Then suddenly Loki leaped up. He lunged at Fimagfang with his knife, and he killed him. There was an uproar along the benches. The gods stood up. They shook their shields and howled at Loki. They drove him out of the hall, and he escaped into the darkness of the forest on the island of Hlesey. Aegir and his wife ran. The gods and the elves resumed their places. They began to drink once more. It was not long before Loki returned from the darkness to the feasting hall. He ambushed Aegir's 2nd servant outside the door. "Don't move, elder," he said. "Not one step further until you've told me this. What's all that hubbub? When they're not slopping their ale and sleeping, what are the great gods talking about?" "The great gods are comparing their weapons," said Eldur, "and their prowess in battle. You won't find a single god in there, not even an elf with a good word to say for you." Loki's mouth twisted into a hideous smile. "Never mind," he said. "I'm going back in. I don't mean to miss this feast. I'll fill their hearts with hatred and grief and mix venom with their ale." "They'll rub your face in your filth," said Eldur. "Have a care, Eldur, before you start to trade insults with me. Whatever you dredge up, I'll repay with twice over." Loki scornfully elbowed Eldur out of the way and stepped into the hall. When the feasters saw who had come in, they all stopped drinking and stopped talking. Loki faced the barrier of silence. He sidled to the middle of the great hall. "Here's the sky traveler. He's rather thirsty," he announced dryly. "It's a long journey to Aegir's hall. Would one of the gods care to bring me a cup of shining ale?" Loki stood motionless. His head swiveled as he surveyed the gathering ranged all around him. "Why are you all so silent, you dismal gang of gods? Haven't you one word between you? Either make room and give me a place at this feast, or else tell me I'm unwelcome." Bragi was never at a loss for words. He called out, The gods will no longer make room and give you a place amongst them. You're not the kind of company they want at a feast." Loki ignored Bragi altogether and addressed himself to the High One. "Remember, Odin, how long ago we mixed our blood in brotherhood? You swore that you would only drink if a drink were brought to us both." "Move up then, Vidar," said Odin, turning to his son. "Make room for the wolf's father at this feast. We don't want any more of Loki's troublemaking here in Aegir's hall." Vidar got up, poured out a cup of ale, and handed it to Loki. Then Loki looked around him, and anyone who was close enough to him could see his spiteful expression. "Greetings, gods, goddesses, greetings," called Loki. "I greet all this holy gathering, all but one." Bragi slumped on the bench over there. Bragi shook his head. "If only you keep your rancor to yourself and spare yourself the fury of the gods. I'll give you a horse out of my own hoard. I'll give you a sword, and once more I'll give you a ring." "Bragi the bragger," said Loki. "You've never had a horse or a ring to your name, and you never will. Of all the gods and elves in this hall, you're the greatest coward. When arrows are loosed, you barely dare peep from behind your shield." "If I were outside," said Bragi evenly, "and not sitting here in Aegir's hall, I'd twist your head off your miserable body. That would be fair price for your lies." "If only you had actions matched up to your big mouth," Loki retorted. "Look at Bragi sitting on the bench, as sweet and soft as any bride. If you feel so angry, why don't you get up and fight? Heroes don't waste words mapping things out." Then Idunn turned to her husband. "Bragi, I beg you, think of us and our children and all the gods. Leave Loki alone. Don't exchange any more insults here in Aegir's hall." "Enough, Idunn," shouted Loki. "I know no woman as wanton as you. What an appetite! You even wound your white arms around your brother's murderer." Despite Loki's withering abuse, Idunn did not lose her composure. "I will not exchange insults with Loki here in Aegir's hall. All this ale has made Bragi talkative, and I've told him to keep his temper." Then the goddess Gefjon added, "Why do these two gods bandy jibs and sneers? Everyone knows how Loki revels in foul mockery and hates the gods in Asgard." "Enough, Gefjon," shouted Loki. "I know a thing or two about you. I even know who seduced you. That boy offered you a sparkling necklace, and you straddled him. Loki, you're mad to incense... Loki, you're mad to incense Gefjon," Odin called out. "You've lost your senses. She can see all that is to come as clearly as I can." "Enough!" Odin shouted Loki. "You never could be even-handed. You've often let the weaker man snatch victory in battle." "I may have let the weaker man snatch victory in battle," Odin replied. "You lived under the earth for 8 winters in the shape of a woman, a milkmaid, yes, and you've borne babies and been milked by them, a woman through and through." "They say on Samsay, you once worked charms and spells like a witch," replied Loki. "They say you moved amongst the men in the shape of a witch, a woman through and through." Now, Odin's wife Frigg tried to restore peace. "You would better do both to keep these things to yourself," she said. "There's nothing to be gained from ranking up what's best forgotten." "Enough, Frigg," shouted Loki. "You're Fiogin's daughter, and you were born a whore. You may be Odin's wife, but you shared your bed with his brothers, Vili and Vi, into the bargain." "If I had a son," said Frigg. A son such as Baldur sitting beside me in Aegir's hall, you'd not get away without a fight. Ah, Frigg, said Loki scathingly. I can see you'd like to know more about my skills. It was I who fixed things so that you'll never again welcome Baldur home. Freya rounded on Loki, her eyes blazing. Loki, you're mad to boast about your terrible crime. There's nothing Frigg does not know, even though she may remain silent. Enough, Freya, shouted Loki. I know you through and through, and you're not wholly spotless. You've slept with every single god and elf gathered in this hall. Your mouth is full of lies, said Freya, and you're spelling out your own doom. You'll leave here wishing you'd never bothered to come. Enough, Freya, shouted Loki. You're a foul witch with a string of evil works to your name. The bright gods caught you in bed with your own brother, and then, Freya, you farted. Njord raised his voice in defense of the goddess and against Loki. A woman lies with her husband or lover or both. Does it really matter much in the end? It's far worse to clap eyes on this womanish god who has borne babies. Enough, Njord, shouted Loki. You were sent from the east and given to the gods as a hostage. Hymir's daughter squatted over you and pissed straight into your mouth. The journey was long, said Njord, but it was a great honor to be given to the gods as a hostage, and I fathered a son who was well loved and highest of those on high. Too much, Njord. I'll cap your absurd boast and share your secret. You spawned your fair son on your own sister, so at least you knew what to expect. Then Tyr spoke up in support of Njord's son. Freyr, he called. Then Tyr spoke up in support of Njord's son. Freyr, he called out, is one of the noblest of all the brave gods. He doesn't trifle with virgins or seduce other men's wives, and he freebounds men from their fetters. Enough, Tyr, shouted Loki. You've never been much of a hand at bringing two parties to an understanding. They smiled wickedly. Need I remind you of how you lost your right one when Fenrir snapped it off? I lost a hand, but you lost Hradvinir, the mighty wolf. We were both hapless, and now in his fetters Fenrir must chafe and wait into the world's end. Enough, Tyr, shouted Loki again. Your good wife was lucky enough to be the mother of my son, and were you paid 1 penny, you poor fool, by way of recompense? The wolf, cried Freyr, will lie in chains at the mouth of the river until the gods meet their doom. And unless you bite on your tongue, you lie-smith, you'll soon be chained up too. You're the one who brought Gymir's daughter with gold, retorted Loki, and sold your sword into the bargain. You poor fool. When the sons of Muspel ride through Mirkwood, you'll have to await them empty-handed. Freyr's servant, Big Veer, was enraged at the way in which Loki had insulted his master. If I were nobly born as Freyr, he said, and sat in so high a seat, I'd grab this ghastly crow and beat his bones into pulp. Who's that little creature? Asked Loki, groveling and yapping and snapping. You're always whispering in Freyr's ear or quibbling by the quern. I am Barley Big Veer, said Freyr's servant, and I am quick to get my way as gods and men allow. To see all father's sons all gather to drink ale fills me with delight. Enough, Big Veer, shouted Loki. You've never been able to give men their due portion of meat, and when a hero's made ready to fight, no one could find you. You were hiding under the straw strewn on the floor. You're drunk, Loki, cried Heimdall. Your jabs and gibs are insane, Loki. Why not leave off now? No one in his cup cares about curbing his tongue. Enough, Heimdall, shouted Loki. It was said long ago that your life should be menial. You can never sleep or even sit down. Day and night you stand awake, the watchman of the gods. You're so quick as they come, Loki, said Skadi. But you won't be at large swirling your tail much longer. The gods will bind you to a boulder with guts ripped out of your ice-cold sun. Even if the gods bind me to a boulder with gut ripped out of my ice-cold sun, I led the way when we killed and captured your father, the giant Hlesey, jeered Loki. If you led the way when the gods captured and killed Hlesey, Skadi said, my hall and my temples will always echo with curses on your name. Loki's mouth twisted, and his eyes shone orange and green. You spoke so much more sweetly to Laufey's son when you invited him into your bed. That's well worth a mention, since we're both giving our weaknesses on airing. Thor's wife, Sif, stood up. She left her place at the bench and stepped towards Loki. Gently she took the cup out of his clenched right fist and filled it again with ale. Greetings, Loki, she said in her sweet, clear voice. Take this crystal cup brimming with fine ale. At least allow you find me alone amongst us all, wholly guiltless. Loki took the cup, raised and drained it in one movement. You'd certainly stand alone if you were as chaste with all men as you are with most, but I think I know one who inveigled you out of your husband's arms and set you on fire. His name was crafty Loki. Freyr's second servant, Bela, raised her voice in Aegir's hall. The mountains are quaking. That can mean only one thing. Thor's on his way here from Baleskinir. He'll silence the one in this hall who slanders and sneers all gods and men alike. Enough, Bela, shouted Loki. You are Bigvir's wife, and you're poisonous through and through. It's a scandal that you mix with the gods at all, caked with your own excrement. Loki was so carried away by his flight of words that he did not see that Thor had walked into Aegir's hall. The god of thunder waited until Loki had had his say, and then stepped forward and crashed his fist on a trestle table so that the crystal cups leaped into the air. Hold your tongue, you scum, he roared, or my hammer Mjolnir will shut your mouth. I'll swipe your shoulder stone off your neck, and that will be the end of you. Look, everyone, cried Loki, unabashed. Here's the son of Earth. What a blustering bully you are, Thor. But you'll be less fierce when you grapple with Fenrir and see him gulp down Odin, the father of victory. Hold your tongue, you scum, roared Thor, or my hammer Mjolnir will shut your mouth. I'll pick you up and hurl you into the east, and no one will have to set eyes on you again. If you were you, Thor, said Loki, I wouldn't say too much about your own journey east. You cowered in the thumb of a glove, you noble god. You quite forgot your name was Thor. Hold your tongue, you scum, roared Thor, or my hammer Mjolnir will shut your mouth. I'll raise my right hand, and what smashed Ragnir will smash your bones too. For all your threats with your hammer, said Loki, I fancy I have a long life before me. Do you remember the giant Skrymir's bag and how unyielding those straps were? You were unable to get at the provisions and felt quite faint with hunger. Hold your tongue, scum, roared Thor, or my hammer Mjolnir will shut your mouth. What smashed Hrungnir was dispatch you to hell, right down to the doors of the dead. The god of thunder gripped Mjolnir menacingly. Loki raised one hand and shook his head. I've shown the gods and the sons of gods the sharp edge of my thoughts. But because of you and you alone, I think I'll take my leave now. I know all about your strength. Loki paused and looked defiantly around him, and then addressed himself to his host. You brewed fine ale, Aegir, but you'll never hold another feast such as this. Loki's voice was rising. Flickering flames will gorge on this hall and gut it and destroy everything you own. Your body will be flayed by fire. Loki turned and was gone, and his terrible words echoed round the halls. For a long time, the gods and goddesses and elves and their ale, shaken and grieving, in silence they sat. They rose and left Aegir's hall. And here's where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.